So let's start. Number 7. The Scottish Maiden. So why didn't 16th century executioners just use a giant sword to behead people? Because, well, humans have terrible aim, and it often took 3 or 4 brutally messy swings to actually finish the job. Enter James Douglas, the 4th Earl of Morton. Back in the 1560s, he was the regent of Scotland, and he was completely sick of these sloppy executions. So, he introduced a highly efficient, gravity-powered beheading machine to the country. He called it the Maiden. Think of it like a giant, 10-foot-tall cigar cutter for humans. It featured a 5-pound, lead-weighted blade mounted on a vertical oak track. You pull a peg, gravity takes over, and boom, a perfectly clean cut on the very first try. For years, Morton used the Maiden to efficiently clear out his political enemies, sending over 150 people to a quick demise. But fast forward to 1581, and the political power dynamics suddenly shifted. Morton found himself on the wrong side of the law, arrested and charged with a royal murder. He was sentenced to death, and the new guys in charge decided there was absolutely no better tool to use than the exact machine Morton himself had brought to Scotland. On June 2nd, Morton was locked into his own invention. The heavy blade dropped, working flawlessly to spec, and severed his head instantly. He set out to make executions foolproof, and wound up being the fool providing the proof. By the way, this machine predated the famous French guillotine by over 200 years, and if you're ever in Edinburgh, you can still see the actual blade on display today. Number 6. The mutual blood transfusion. A Russian polymath named Alexander Bogdanov tried to hack the cheat code for eternal life. Back in 1920s Moscow, he believed that if you simply exchanged blood with younger people, you could completely reverse the aging process. And honestly, his engineering was spot on. He built a direct, human-to-human tubing apparatus that worked like an absolute charm, effortlessly swapping blood between 2 living subjects. For his 12th experiment in 1928, Bogdanov hooked himself up to swap 1 liter of blood with a young student. There was just one tiny, microscopic problem. The student had both malaria and tuberculosis. But Bogdanov wasn't worried. He didn't really believe in blood types, and he figured his wise, older blood would cure the sick kid, while the kid's youthful blood would rejuvenate him. The machine functioned exactly as it was supposed to. It's basically like successfully installing a top-tier water pump, but dropping the intake hose directly into a toxic swamp. The pumps purred, flawlessly delivering the infected, completely mismatched blood directly into Bogdanov's circulatory system. Because the blood types didn't match, his immune system went into overdrive, attacking the foreign cells and causing them to burst. Bogdanov suffered a massive hemolytic transfusion reaction and died shortly after, though. Miraculously, the sick student fully recovered. Bogdanov successfully built a flawless machine for eternal life and used it to give himself a 15-minute death sentence. But hey, with tech billionaires still doing young plasma exchanges today, you can't say he wasn't ahead of his time. Number 5. The electric chair clamps. Everyone thinks the electric chair was just invented by one twisted scientist and never changed. They're wrong. The truth is, some of its most grim upgrades came straight from the inmates themselves. Meet Charles Justice. Back in the 1890s, he was doing time at the Ohio Penitentiary and got assigned a pretty morbid chore cleaning the execution chamber. While working around the death house, he noticed a gruesome flaw. The standard straps holding the inmates in the electric chair were weak, allowing their violently convulsing bodies to flail around during the execution. Being a handy guy, Justice decided to fix it. He designed and installed a set of heavy-duty metal clamps and upgraded leather restraints. These new straps locked a person in, perfectly keeping their body flush against the electrodes for maximum fatal efficiency. His good behavior and handiwork actually earned him some favor, and he was eventually paroled. But freedom didn't suit him. Shortly after getting out, Justice robbed and murdered a local farmer. In the ultimate twist of fate, he was caught, sent right back to the exact same prison, and sentenced to death in the exact same chair. On November 9th, 1911, the guards walked him into the execution chamber and strapped him down, using the precise, heavy-duty clamps he had built himself. And guess what? His invention worked flawlessly. He was electrocuted without a single hitch, completely unable to move a muscle thanks to his own engineering. It's basically like building a foolproof lock on a door, and then accidentally locking yourself inside. He literally made the bed he was going to die in and made absolutely sure he couldn't roll out of it. Number 4. The Web Rotary Press. A guy named William Bullock tried to completely revolutionize the newspaper industry by building a massive, unstoppable printing press. Back in 1863, printing was painfully slow, so Bullock invented a rotary press that automatically fed continuous rolls of paper through giant spinning metal cylinders at 10,000 sheets an hour. The machine's greatest engineering strength was its flawless, unbreakable grip. Once it caught onto a piece of material, it pulled it through at lightning speed without ever stopping. Think of it like a massive, industrial-sized pasta maker. In April 1867, Bullock was installing a brand new machine for a paper in Philadelphia. A driving belt was slightly out of place, so he did what any frustrated mechanic would do in the heat of the moment. He kicked it to force it back onto the pulley. Big mistake. His leg got caught in the belt, and because the machine was perfectly efficient and emergency stop buttons hadn't actually been invented yet, it did exactly what it was designed to do. The heavy gears relied on intense friction and torque, and they couldn't distinguish between paper and bone. The press blindly grabbed this new material and flawlessly fed his leg right into the crushing rollers. His leg was instantly mangled, and he died of gangrene a few days later during an amputation surgery. Bullock successfully revolutionized the speed of the daily news, but tragically, his own gruesome death ended up being the headline. Number 3. The Demon Core. A top-tier physicist named Louis Slotin tried to manually tame a 14-pound ball of weapons-grade plutonium using nothing but a standard flathead screwdriver. And, well, it went exactly as poorly as you'd think. Back in 1946, at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, Slotin was the government's go-to guy for assembling nuclear weapons. He'd run this specific experiment, morbidly nicknamed tickling the dragon's tail, dozens of times. He would lower a beryllium dome over the plutonium core to bounce radioactive neutrons back inside, stopping just short of a deadly chain reaction by wedging his trusty screwdriver under the rim. Think of it like putting a microphone right next to a speaker. Eventually, that feedback loop builds up and blows out your eardrums, except here, it's done with splitting atoms. The terrifying part? There were no complex mechanical parts to malfunction. The setup relied purely on the merciless 100% perfection of physics. On May 21st, Slotin's screwdriver slipped just a fraction of an inch. The heavy beryllium dome dropped completely flush. Because the dome fully enclosed the core, it did exactly what it was designed to do, flawlessly, trapping every single neutron and bouncing them straight back in. The core went prompt critical, instantly. A terrifying, bright blue flash of ionized air filled the room. Slotin managed to flip the dome off a second later, heroically using his own body to shield the other scientists. But the physics had already done their job. He absorbed a massive, lethal dose of radiation, over 2,000 rem, in mere milliseconds, and died an agonizing death 9 days later. He was the smartest man in the room, working on a $2 billion project, and he was killed by the absolute simplest tool in the toolbox. Needless to say, the government permanently banned hands-on nuclear testing right after that. Number 2. The Bed Pulley System. Back in the early 1940s, Thomas Midgley Jr. was one of the most decorated chemical engineers on the planet. He's actually the guy responsible for putting lead into gasoline and inventing Freon. But at age 51, he contracted polio, leaving him severely disabled and completely stuck in bed. Always the stubborn inventor, Midgley hated relying on his wife just to help him move. So, he designed an incredibly elaborate system of mechanized ropes, pulleys, and counterweights to lift himself out of bed. And honestly, it was a brilliant piece of engineering. The block and tackle system multiplied force flawlessly, meaning a tiny pull on the ropes could effortlessly lift his entire body weight. But on November 2nd, 1944, Midgley was maneuvering himself into the harness when he somehow got severely tangled. Because his system was explicitly designed to hold massive amounts of weight and maintain perfect tension, it didn't give way or snap when he started to struggle. Think of it like getting your tie caught in a perfectly functioning garage door opener. The machine doesn't know you're trapped. It just keeps pulling. The ropes wrapped securely around his neck. The flawless mechanical advantage he had engineered kicked in, doing exactly what it was supposed to do, lifting his heavy frame straight by his throat. He was strangled to death by his own invention. In the ultimate dark irony, the man whose chemicals slowly choked the Earth's atmosphere ended up being choked to death by his own perfectly engineered ropes. Number 1. The Brazen Bull. This sounds like a twisted myth straight out of a horror movie, but it's actually one of the most brutal pieces of recorded history. Back around 560 BC, an ambitious brass founder named Perillos wanted to impress a notoriously cruel dictator named Phalaris. So, he built a giant, hollow bronze bull designed for executing political enemies. But the true dark genius wasn't just the roasting. Perillos engineered complex acoustic tubes inside the bull's nose. When the victim inside screamed in agony, the pipes would filter the sound, turning their wails into the melodic roaring of an angry beast. It's basically like putting someone inside a giant, burning tea kettle that whistles a tune when the water boils. Perillos proudly pitched his invention, promising the tyrant that the screams would sound like tender, pathetic, and melodious bellowings. But Phalaris was actually disgusted by the sheer sadism of the pitch. Instead of praising the inventor, the dictator told Perillos to climb inside and demonstrate the acoustic pipes himself to prove they worked. The second he got in, Phalaris locked the door and ordered a fire lit underneath. The bronze conducted the heat perfectly to spec, and those complex acoustic tubes, they worked flawlessly. Phalaris got to hear the exact melodious roaring he was promised. They actually ended up pulling Perillos out right before 8 he roasted to death, just so he wouldn't desecrate the metalwork, and then promptly threw him off a cliff instead. Talk about pitching an idea so fire, your boss literally makes you beta test it. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.